The title of this podcast is Resume Virtues versus Eulogy Virtues. The title was inspired by something I read in this book called Outlive by Peter Attia. And he's a surgeon who is really committed to well-being of his patients and himself. And a lot of it, the first part of the book talks about this idea of health span and lifespan. Lifespan being how long you live, and health span being more about the quality of those years. Like, are you in optimal health during those years? And in the latter part of the book, he starts to, talk about other things beyond nutrition, the four horsemen of the human experience, which are the different ways that people primarily die when their health is not optimal. Cancer, heart disease, cognitive illnesses such as Alzheimer's and dementia. And then he also mentions diabetes. And so in this conversation, latter part of the book, after going through exercise and nutrition that supports all that and sleep, he talks about mental health. And he devoted quite a bit of time to mental health. And he was very open and vulnerable in sharing what his mental health was. Like, one of his default settings were he would quickly get angry. And a lot of it was attributed to not feeling good enough. He was so, in the grip of being a perfectionist that there was no internal peace, and he would take it out on other people, his family, his kids, situations. He was just not in the best space. And he got to this part where a friend asked him about, his life and how he felt about it. And what he was listing was all these resume virtues, what was on his CV, his accomplishments, graduating from college and med school and residency and being a physician in a thriving practice. He would list things like that, his achievements in sports. And his friend was like, listen, your CV or your resume virtues are about accomplishment achievements, which are what you're saying about yourself. Whereas your eulogy virtues are what friends and people say about you and family. And I started thinking about that. Like, before I started doing the practice, I had a lot of resume virtues. And after doing the practice and working on myself in a really intentional way and being very consistent, not missing a day, of not only doing the steps, and the techniques for the practice, but actually applying the principles throughout the day, especially when things went wrong or things that my mind said are wrong. This person said this might happen. I don't want this to happen. All of those things that you do that, where you're ruminating, you're anxious, there's obsessive thinking. Really, there's no inner peace. And you need the outside world to be a certain way for you to be okay inside. When I was living in that space, as I reflect, I had a lot of resume, virtues. But when doing the practice, it's I think it's changed, based on what people have shared with me, that, I sprinkle kindness wherever I go. They see me constantly working on myself so that I'm a contribution in the spaces that I enter. I'm trying to serve them and hopefully make them a little bit better than when I got there. And I'm intentional about that. Not intentional in a way like I want to go into this space and make it better, but that's just a result of me working on myself, that I have a tendency to be a contribution to spaces in ways that I weren't before, even if it's a simple good morning, or it's keeping noble silence when people are commenting about things, where they're complaining or judging or being bothered by things like I used to be all the time. And keeping noble silence in that sometimes is actually a contribution to the space, especially if you have nothing good to add. So I want to ask you, what will people say about you? Are you sprinkling kindness? Are you bothered by everything that, people in your life do, whether it's coworkers or your significant other? Much of that is of your own making, not being able to handle what the other person does. Will people say that, I rarely hear them complain. I rarely hear them, at the effect of the personal mind, of being caring about, what other people think in a way that They want to look good to people, or avoiding looking bad, that they're spending all that time with doing that, that they worry a lot, or anxious, or obsessive thinking, or judging, or criticizing, that they're not peaceful. Well, people say that about you. And those are your eulogy virtues. And they also include how you make people feel. Do people comment that, man, you are a blessing? I mean, I thought it was just so wonderful. We were here on Tuesday in the ToBeRe studio working out. And typically I will add in exercises that are super challenging. And every once in a while, I will suggest an exercise that is not quite as challenging. So, for example, they did uh, a very intense upper body workout. And the last exercise of that round was to do push-ups. And I, said, do 5 push-ups. And so my friend Sharon said, Keith, 5 push-ups instead of 10, that's a gift. And that's not lost to me, Keith. Thank you for the gift. And then Donna says, Keith is the gift. Keith is always a gift. And I was like, man, thank you, Donna. And that's Keith 2.0 she's talking about, because 1.0 was not a gift. I was a problem for myself and for others. So I ask you, are you busy working on resume virtues, or are you working on eulogy virtues? I argue that if you place your attention and your commitment on working on the eulogy virtues, the resume virtues will take care of themselves.